right, Sterile Processing Universe, Hank Balch back in studio, episode 12 of our Rigid Scope Expert Series here with Kurt.audette. Kurt, welcome back to the channel today.
I'm disappointed it's the last one, Hank, but I have a funny feeling it might not be.
I'm telling you, well, the thing I love about these expert series is, even when they wrap, the conversation lives on in social media, in email, online through the follow up questions. So you're absolutely right. No matter what happens from here, we're going to keep educating on this endoscope topic. I know you will. And I know you have sparked a ton of interest over the last 12 months on this topic. And we're going to continue that because at the end of the day, what we're doing right here is impacting patient safety on the other end of the scopes. I absolutely love that. So, speaking of that point, we're part two of the inspection process. So, you kind of laid out the context, the tools, had a great conversation about color and light. And now we're to the point of, all right, we got these devices on our tables. What next?
And I would disagree, Hank. We're going to do this together. It's not just me. We're going to do this together.
Okay, I love it.
So back to your earlier comment. Yeah, so we kind of set the stage for what a telescope is looking at when it comes to an image. So we're looking at color, red, green, and blue are the primary colors we're looking at, and then we're looking at black and white or gray scales, whatever term you want to use in the video industry. They might say grayscale. We talked about there's an optical inspection, and again, that involves the color, black and white. Then we have the mechanical inspection, which the construction of the telescope. We'll go with that one because it's a little bit easier. So as far as inspections, external inspections, a visual inspection, the simplest way to make sure that a shaft of a telescope isn't damaged is we can just simply take 3 fingers, these two and your thumb, and take it. And if I use a Sharpie as a tool, you can actually walk down the shaft without even looking at it and feel for depressions. So you could close your eyes and you're using a different sense and you can feel if there's dents versus trying to visually look at it, grab an eye loop, as we got pictured here. So that's one way to do a mechanical inspection. Then from there, you could use an eye loop, a rigid scan tool, to identify where the damage is located on that rigid endoscope shaft. And if you identify that distal tip, maybe intermediate, and you talked about analytics, near and dear to my heart, love analytics. We then might be able to ascertain from some analytics that maybe it's getting caught between a base and a lid. Maybe during use, they're just flexing a little bit more than they should be with the trocar, or, all these different scenarios that might help us identify the root cause. So that's the mechanical side. And obviously there's a lot more. Could be, chemistry caused damages at the distal face because either we're not mixing enzymatic chemistry, which I know we talked about a little bit earlier. Maybe it's how we dry it or don't dry it before it goes into a low temp sterilization process with a chemistry that could interact with an enzymatic, with some water, even though the cycle isn't canceled for whatever reason. So those are some of the things mechanically. Optically, so if I'm an SPD tech and I'm trying to figure out how do I inspect a rigid telescope, I think the simplest way, and this is what we're trying to accomplish, and we talked about it in episode 11, this is a black and white signal, no color. And a lot of folks think color is super important, don't get me wrong, but I can tell you this, that with optics, if the light transmission is correct, then you will get the correct, accurate colors if you're viewing that telescope by your eye. Again, if we're using a camera head and then a monitor, that's a whole different conversation. But we can at least, as an SPD technician, say, I have a telescope that's good or it may be bad optically based on an inspection I'm going to show you. So there are some folks who might think this image over here looks much better than this one, and vice versa. And the argument would become, I can see greater detail here, but I can't ascertain something that's happening here. In this image, I can. So this goes into contrast. And this is a conversation you and I had on episode 11. These lines or grayscales determine how good the contrast level is on a video monitor. Again, this can apply to a telescope as well. So when we look at this, maybe the depth of the contrast isn't as good as this, because you could agree that this nose actually pops off the screen a little bit better than this one does, but I can't see the overall image here. So it's about the user, and we've talked about this online and offline. You know, we want to make sure our clinical user is happy at the end of the day and our patient is safe. So how do we inspect and make sure that we have correct light transmission if we don't have one of these automated benches? The quickest way is you could use an eye loop. So we've already talked about an eye loop, inspecting for damaged rod lenses. So that's going to tell us we have a rod lens that's cracked, damaged, might tell us where it is, general location, but it's not going to tell us if the image is clear. So to do that, what I'm showing you are two pictures. And in these pictures, we are actually looking through the telescope eyepiece with a naked eye. I've just done it to a video monitor so we can show you this. So folks are going to say, well, what do I use to look at? And a lot of times, and I laugh when I see it happen, but if you don't know, you don't know. And that's why we're here today. You give someone a telescope and you say, hey, how does this look? And the first thing they do, Hank, is like this. And they look to the sky. So my question is, what are you looking at? Because scopes are designed with a specific prescription, which we've already spoken about, and they're designed to work in a certain space. In general, when I'm doing an inspection on a telescope, I'm looking at an object 3 to 5 millimeters away, maybe some greater, some less, but it's a general rule of thumb. You could take your thumb and your finger and do that distance where the distal tip is here and your surface is here. So
You
just a
said 3 to 5 millimeters, but do you mean inches?
could be. Uh, it depends on scope. So let's not
Okay.
focus on a value.
Okay.
Let's
Okay.
just say this is, yeah, this is our rule of thumb because some of
Okay.
our
It's like
Canadian
the
folks might,
Hawaiian kind of,
yeah,
hey,
yeah.
like
So
hang
some of our
loose.
folks from Canada might say, what about metric? So
Oh, yeah, yeah.
let's
Okay.
let's keep this as a rule of thumb. And
Okay.
listen, if it's out of focus, then we can come a little bit closer.
Okay.
If we need to come back, same. The distance isn't super important. What we're trying to determine is when we look at the image, when you look at this image here across the entire image, it looks like it's faded, washed out, some terms you'll hear. What I'm looking for, and it's important that you use something that generates black text, not color, black text. You'll notice that in this scenario, there's a good black to white ratio, and you can see the line, it's clearly defined. As we go towards the outer edges, this is a good image, but not a great image. You'll see that it kind of fades out a little bit here. Where this is nice and clear, this is clear, and this could just be the way I had the telescope lined up. What you should be able to do is look at a business card or something that has black and white text. Font size doesn't matter. Look at it straight on first and see how the peripheral edges look. Are they grayed out? Is it faded, washed out like this one is? Or do they stay in focus uniformly across? Then what I would do is I would take that object and now I start to take the telescope and go around the field to see if I move the telescope, do certain things come into focus in certain areas. So if I've got a damaged lens and it's dented in this corner over here, as I rotate through the image, anything I view in this area will be out of focus.
Okay.
Does that make sense?
Absolutely. Yeah. Yeah. That's really helpful. The distance piece is really helpful. The call out around what are you looking at? If you're holding it up to the ceiling and to the
Yeah.
light, versus actually, can you see that? I think that's extremely helpful.
Some would argue that we're looking at light transmission and can I see something? Now, obviously, I shouldn't say obviously, if we're doing an inspection and we're looking at a business card, you need to have light. And most of the prep and pack benches have some type of light with magnification and, we can shine it down there. That's adequate light. Um, you know, Instead of investing in an optical bench that, measures illumination, measures all this, this is a quick, deep down, dirty way to do this without having to spend that capital. I'm not saying those benches aren't great because they are, because that takes it a next step further where we're measuring some things like depth of field, depth of focus, which isn't important right now. We're just trying to figure out if we've got a clear image right now. when we're doing this inspection.
And I've seen those little like battery powered light transmitters you can kind of connect to the scope post there. And
Yeah, the little flashlights, those are
yes,
awesome.
yeah, that's pretty cool. Um, one more call out here before we wrap on this, Kurt. And again, like I feel bad because we're just so scratching the surface of this topic, but that's the vision for this, just to get folks hooked enough, get them excited about the conversation to talk more. But uh, back to the tool piece. If it's eye loops, if it's the scope tester, the scan tool there, if it's even the benches that we've alluded to, all of those you should have some kind of cleaning process in place. That's again coming from the manufacturer's recommendation. You don't want to just be using random chemicals on your eye loops, because then you may mess up the visualization of your testing tool, which is then going to undercut everything we're talking about. But because we're touching these devices on a regular basis, there's multiple different devices that are coming through this inspection stage, and we want to make sure you got some kind of cleaning disinfection plan on your inspection tools themselves to make sure that we're
What a
not
great point, Hank.
cross-contaminating through the process. Yeah. So just want
Yeah,
to call that out.
yeah, yeah. How many tools do we bring in, and we're like, how do we disinfect this?
Yes. Yep. Yeah. So treating that well, going back to one of the words we've used multiple times through this series, IFUs, not only for the device, but also for the inspection tools that you're using as well. So Kurt, terrific 12-part conversation here. I'm excited to introduce you to more of the world. There's a lot of folks already know your name, your face, and your insights, but hopefully we're just broadening that perspective through this 12-part series, introduce you to people who need to know the kinds of things that you know, because it's going to help them to protect their patients better. So really appreciate your time
That's the goal.
and your passion on this series. Thanks, man. All right. If you're not already connected with Kurt, track him down through LinkedIn. We're going to have his contact information in the show notes. And make sure to check out the rest of this series. If you've missed any of this 12-part episodes, we're going to have them on YouTube. They're going to be on the Beyond Clean website. And of course, they're all over social media. If you like one of these episodes, make sure to share it to the rest of your department, to your educator, to your manager, to learn more about this critical device of rigid endoscopes in sterile processing. That'll do it for this 12-part series. And until we meet again, keep fighting dirt.